Welcome to the Positively Star Wars Senate podcast. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi. May the Force be with you.
Looky, Senator. Decent Jedi arriving.
Let's make this our best show ever.
I will sign no treaty, Senator.
I am the Senate.
This is the way.
So, hello, High Republic fans, and welcome to a special episode of the Positively Star Wars Senate podcast, where we are concentrating solely on the High Republic. This episode is recorded on Sunday, the 5th of March 2023, using the powerful dyad of the Force, which connects two Force-sensitive beings, making them one with the Force, and sharing a connection that spans across time and space, otherwise known as Microsoft and Skype in this case. And as ever, I am the Chancellor in the Senate, the obligatory Brit contingent, and I am joined in our very much smaller confines this week by my two fellow American crews across that great pond. I am joined on Skype by Ryan.
Hello there.
And Ricky.
Hello.
Yes, we are going to talk solely about the High Republic and things that have happened since we last really delved into it, which is actually back in December when we talked about the first book of Phase 2, Wave 1, I believe, which was Path of Deceit, which if you haven't read it yet, then spoilers are going to be coming up. And if you have skipped that book for any reason, I think we would all suggest to you that you should go back and read it and take a box of tissues with you. So we are going to discuss, I can't remember, the junior novel, isn't it?
Middle grade is what we call it.
Yeah, The Quest for the Hidden City. I'm saying this, I haven't actually got anything in front of me, so I'm actually using my brain to remember titles here. We'll talk about that one very briefly for reasons that we will get into. And then we're going to talk about Convergence, which I think was the first main novel, adult novel.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the audio drama, which was The Battle for Jeddah, or The Battle of Jeddah. None of us can quite remember. But it's a battle and it's on Jeddah, so it's all fair in love and war. So, going back in time to whenever it was released, I can't remember now. Does anybody know? The Quest for the Hidden City?
It all came out in January.
I'm just getting up in. I should have done this beforehand, but we sort of ad hoc got ourselves. It was actually November. Oh, of course, It's the first one which came out, wasn't it? In over here, we got this one before Path of Deceit in the UK. Yeah. So it was actually released on the November the 1st, 2022. The author was George Mann, and there were 240 pages in it, and I've actually got the physical book. Oh, put it in front of me. Where is it? Hang on.
You just throw it across the room.
Just picking it up. Yeah, I've got it now. There you go. You can hear it.
Oh, you bought the physical book for...
I've actually got the physical book. And I'm pleased to say that it's got some images in it as well. So, which is very handy. So, very good artwork. And there are 240 pages, and that'd be enough to put off somebody like me when they say that it's a book and it's got 240 pages. This is like a mini-sized book. So there's basically about 2 paragraphs on each page, and the text is much bigger. So don't let that put you off, folks. And it's quite a simple kind of book. You're not going to get too confused in it. Though there are probably too many characters in it for me.
People skip over the middle grade books, but I feel like they still have generally good information on the universe as a whole. So,
who were the main antagonists? I'm trying to read the back of my book, which I put. Unfortunately, I haven't got a great memory. That's why I can't remember too much.
There's Master Salandra Show.
That's it.
And Padawan Rupert Natini, who's
yes, and Salandra's the one with the shield.
Yeah,
who also is in the audio drama to get to as well.
Which makes it's kind of confusing. That's why I'm glad I read Quest before the audio drama, because the and I'm just not a fan of audio dramas, I guess. But the way they explained the shield was really difficult for an audio drama, where the middle grade book discussed it really well and gave it backstory, how she believes Jedi should always be the defense. So she's like, of course I'm going to have a shield. I don't ever want to pull my lightsaber. And she uses the Force to keep it floating in front of her, which is always a cool thing.
Yeah, they use it as a sort of like a surfboard, don't they? In this book, to
That's
help.
a shield. I don't know if they serve, because it's a plasma shield, almost from like Naboo type of thing.
I seem to remember it floating.
Yeah, just
when
holds it
the
up.
straps was on it, wasn't it? Yeah. This is about investigating. It was a Pathfinder team, wasn't it? Yeah, Pathfinder team droid shows up at the start, coming with some sort of warning, and then some sort of cryptic message. So Jedi Knight Salandra Rowe and a Padawan Rupa, wherever Natini, are sent to find the missing team members, and their investigation leads them to the planet Glom.
Glom? It's Glom. I think in the audio book it said Glom.
Glom, yeah. I got confused. It was Glom. What were the two names? The Glom, and there was the moon, wasn't there?
Was Abadas and Gloam.
Right, that's it, yeah.
I don't know what the audiobook was, but for me reading it definitely looks like Abadas.
Yes,
I think that's about.
I haven't got a clue how that is written. So Abydos is the moon, isn't it? Was it the other way around?
No, they're two planets.
Two planets. I thought the other one was a moon, because the Glom is where they...
I haven't listened to
Abydos is the main. Yeah, Abydos is the main thing. All the bats, and Glom is the one where the weird stuff is going on.
Yeah,
and
one was used for mining, and then they ended up destroying the planet.
That's right. And that's also where the hyperspace explorer Spence and his son Das are stranded. So most of the books, the story we're following is Spence and his son trying to survive on the planet, and then Salandra and Rupert trying to find out what's going on.
And the return of Sunshine Dobbs.
I think it's Abydos, the planet Abydos, asked for the Jedi's help, or the Republic's help, because the planet is experiencing an energy crisis, which is because they pretty much mined to death the moon, or the other twin planet, whichever it was, Guam. They mined it to death, and now they don't have energy to run their planet anymore. So the Jedi go there to help, and they find all this other mystery, and they find people who have crashed on Guam, and there's this weird sickness, which I thought was really cool. There's the weird sickness that these bat-like species, because it's a bat-like species that no longer flies, which I thought was really interesting. They all use like hovers for everything.
Evolution is a bit of a bugger, isn't it? They've all got the wings, but they don't fly. And they're massive wings. Going by the artwork that's in here, I don't know if you guys have ever... Did you have the book? You didn't. You had the audio.
No, I heard the audiobook of it only.
Okay.
Those spans are absolutely massive. With sort of claws and stuff on it. Yeah. So it must be a right old pain to go around your daily life with wings covering, the whole length of your arms, and trying to do stuff. Not be able to use them to fly.
Yeah, I know they go to Glom to try to save the people. They get inside of one of the ancient cities, which again, I love the history, where even though we're 350 years? Yeah, 350 years before Phantom Menace. It's like they're still teasing history in Star Wars even before that, because it was like an ancient city. They had all these carvings and all this old technology, but they didn't care because the other planet Abydos just mined the heck out of the one, and apparently released like an ancient virus, which I thought was really cool how they explained it. Is how it's stones, and the stones are almost poisoning the species, and it's only this species that it poisons, and it turns like their blood to crystals type of thing, and it makes them go crazy. So, and now that I started watching Last of Us, it very much reminds me of that. So it's where they're kind of poisoned. There's something natural that inhabits people that makes them just go totally nuts. And when they bite and hurt other people, it transmits. Like I said, it's more of a crystal thing instead of I won't spoil anything of Last of Us, but what they use for their weird zombie people. But yeah, it was a middle grade, so there wasn't a ton to it. It was more like, here's some problems. We need energy. This planet is a dead, planet or moon of Glom, whatever it is. It's almost a dead celestial body now because we don't want to use that anymore, and it kept poisoning everybody. So The Jedi go there, they pretty much save them, and then at the end it's like, well, you have a big enough planet where we can use your own natural resources, such as like the sun and the wind, to power your one city. So, and that's kind of a short story on that. And that was pretty much it. If anything, it helped introduce other characters. Like I think Creighton's son was in there. Yeah, they just include us, and they teased Jeddah. And my biggest problem with Quest is it spoiled Convergence for me. So for people reading, definitely start with Path of Deceit. And just a quick note on Path of Deceit. It's pretty much just an introduction to the villains of Phase 2, which is Path of the Open Hand, which is, remember, it's pretty much the backstory to the Nile. So Path of Deceit introduces a character of the Mother, and it introduces the Path of the Open Hand. They have their own adventures, they have their own Jedi. It's a good story. But that's where people who skip young adult, I definitely need it because it introduces all those characters before getting to the adult book. But I read the middle grade book first before the adult, and it spoiled the adult book. So I was pretty upset because I ended up really enjoying the adult book, and I could have enjoyed it more if it wasn't for freaking this middle grade book.
It wasn't even needed in there. It's kind of weird that they put that in there.
It was not needed at all, but I think there was some, let's say, about the order, because I think the orders the books came out, and got this whole huge problem as well with the the Audible stuff doesn't always come at the same time as the books as well. So you can really end up creating your own out of order sequence through no fault of your own, depending on what time the books or the Audible stuff are released in your country. It doesn't help, really. It doesn't help you to get things in a proper order. So I think actually this is supposed to be the first book, isn't it? Before Path of Deceit, I think.
No, absolutely read Path of Deceit. The reading order is Path of Deceit, Convergence, then Quest for the Hidden City, then you can read Jeddah. So, I mean, really, Quest for the Hidden City can even be, well, yeah, definitely read Quest before Battle of Jeddah because it introduces Salandra Show. Salandra Show has a big in Battle of Jeddah.
Mm. And the mother and everything, too.
Yeah, definitely Path of Deceit and then Convergence. So
I kind of feel like Path of Deceit was like the main book in this little series.
Well, in my head, it is like, it's almost like the opening number. Well, it is, but it feels like a big, felt like more of a book than it probably he would have thought it would. Oh yeah, in some respects. Everything all happens on the one planet though in Path of Deceit.
Yeah.
Quest also teased this the Paradise Planet or the Mystery Planet, or I believe it's going to be called Planet X because that's the next middle grade book.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes,
they're teasing that too. So there's definitely, it almost seems like this is more connected than Phase 1, just because the characters are introduced in other books, and then like Creighton's son is introduced here, but then he's also in the Convergence book. So they're just all over. Well, no, I think they talk about Creighton's son, but Salandra Show is introduced here, and then she goes to Battle of Jeddah. So there's a lot of kind of back and forth and connectivity between them all. But as far as Quest for the Hidden City, it was all right. I didn't feel like it was too essential, but it did introduce some characters that appear elsewhere, and they do tease the people that they find on Glom are the ones that Sunshine Dobbs screwed over to get to this hidden planet, which might be the planet where the Nameless are from. So there's a lot of backstory and backfill it in that it still has something, but I would make it the third book that you read behind Path and Convergence.
There was a Jedi Temple, wasn't there, that had been... I assumed that, going from my memory now, that had been ransacked for artifacts in this.
Yeah, which again, it did have some mystery, but it didn't feel as important as, per se, Path of Deceit and Convergence. But it's, as with the other middle grade books, it's good backstories and filler in the universe. So that's kind of my view on just that one.
Absolutely. It's a solid book. It's easy to read. I'd say there's probably a few too many characters in it for me at some stages, but overall it's a easy enough story to pick up on and a reasonable story, but no great. You're not gonna miss out on too much if you don't read it.
It does provide a lot of good backstory for Salandra.
yeah, for Slandra's backstory, it's probably that's the main reason to read it. But in terms of the greater overall plot, it's probably not as
It really is like a
critical,
side quest story.
Yeah.
which I think was what most of these junior ones are. But I think some of the, I can't remember now. Some of the previous ones in did fit in Race to Crash Point Tower.
Test of Courage, Race to Crash Point Tower, and Mission to Disaster.
Yeah, that fit in a bit more with the main story, the Crash Point Tower one, I think. But the first one, the Test of Courage, didn't really fit into the main arc hugely. I didn't think.
That was more of a
different perspective of the event.
Yeah, not that, but it was also an introduction to Vernestra.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes,
that's her thing. There's the Vernestra arc, which I feel is going to have a bigger play in Phase 3. But she was in the middle grade Test of Courage, and then she moved up to the young adult, Into the Dark, Out of the Shadows, and then she moved back down to the middle grade. And her arc was actually, if you just read her arc as her arc, it's fantastic. And the way that her Mission Disaster teases this Phase 2 Wave 1 was great too. But I mean, we won't stick too long on that. We already discussed Phase 1.
Yes. Okay. So I won't spend too much more time on that book. We'll move on to the more meaty one, which is the first proper meat of the Phase 2 meat, which was Convergence.
Yeah. So I got Convergence, written by Godiva. I had the name, but I messed it up. Zurdaya Cordova. I had it memorized. I forgot it. But Convergence is the first adult novel in Phase 2, Wave 1. So just so you know, I had all the notes that I took was 18,052 characters. I had written 3,300 words, and I have it now all reduced down to one page of a Greg rule book. So,
that's pretty impressive, because normally your notes are longer than the book. Just quite impressive. Yeah.
So it's 18,000 characters down to one page in a Greg notebook. And I apologize for the name, but Zoraida Cordova. I know I messed it up before. I had it memorized, but I thought I could wing it, and I can't. I need notes. So anyway, I'll go through Convergence book. So this is, like I said, this is the main thing that kind of revolves. This is the big story for Phase 2, Wave 1 that all of them are going around. And it's about the Forever War, which is 5 years, on the planet Irem Rona. And we've discussed it before. The Forever War is probably just much like here we have wars in the Middle East that have lasted forever, but it's gotten really bad in certain spans of time. So I still find that a weird term to use, a Forever War. And it's like 5 years. I'm like, oh, that's weird. So
I want to make characters like it's finally ending, and oh my gosh, we gotta finally get this.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I wonder if it's a reverse psychology. Maybe they don't mean it's gone on forever. Maybe they feel like it's going to go on forever.
Yeah, but they definitely disliked a long time. So again, this is kind of what Phase 2 goes around. It's the war between the twin planets Irem and Arona. So Iram and Arona. So all the peace talks, all the battles, everything going back to Dalna, all the peace summaries, and everything kind of revolves around these two, which I think was really good. And it kind of features the main cast of characters. We got 4 Jedi, mainly the 2 Jedi, Masters Sharul Roy and Master Crichton's son. And then the big one, which is seen on the cover, is Gela Natai. So she's the Jedi Knight, who's surprisingly 30 years old, because I thought she was younger too until they says, I'm 30. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought she was like Vern's age.
Yeah. So, no, she's 30, but she's a knight. She's still learning. And then the main kind of characters between the two, and again, I'm starting to realize maybe I just really like Romeo and Juliet romance style books, because Lost Stars is one of my favorite Star Wars books. And honestly, I've read this one. I thought it was great. I'm listening to the audiobook, and I'm not going to lie. It was straight up bringing tears to my eyes, because I just love the storytelling of 2 warring planets that have hated each other forever, but it's up to the kids of the king and queen to get along to try to end the peace. So it has Ziri Albaran from the planet Irona, and then Fantu Zen from the planet Iram. And, one's like a desert planet that's used for mining. So it's this culture that was raised on war. You hold a knife from birth type of thing, and you prove yourself in battle. Like you're king by being the strongest. And then there's Iram, which is almost a complete water planet, minus islands and stuff like that. And they're relatively peaceful. They rely on each other. They go to the sea for sustenance, where Erona is a dead, not really a dead planet, but it's mostly a desert planet. So it's very brutal, where Iram is very life giving and everyone gets along more. So I love the Romeo and Juliet style storytelling where they're mortal enemies, but they kind of fall in love type of thing. So their adventures is it starts off with the planet Erona is getting an ice delivery from their allies because they're running out of water. They got droughts. Planet Iram is getting aid from the Jedi. And then one of the two chancellors, because remember, we got Chancellor Greylark and we have Chancellor Malo. So Greylark takes care of all the stuff on Coruscant, and Malo's the one that goes around and kind of just takes care of the Outer Rim. So, but Malo shows up when these two other ships arrive for aid, and Malo kind of causes a big disaster. He gets in everyone's way. They ended up kind of crashing. One ship from planet Erona kind of gets sabotaged, and it's falling to the planet. It explodes, and it deactivates Ziri's ship, which is the princess of Erona, and she falls down to the planet Iram. They think it's an attack. The city wants to blow it up. She crashes into the water, and the prince of the planet Iram jumps in to save her and pulls her out. So immediately you have like this hate from kind of each other, where like they're the enemies, but he couldn't not save somebody because he cares about saving life. So they have that big disaster where Fantu, the prince, saves Ziri, the princess. And they kind of just like each other from there. They're like, okay, we're going to try to get along. And so they can get the princess back to Erona, they decide to have peace talks, which doesn't go well between the parents. Skipping a bunch of stuff here. It doesn't go well for the parents. They hate each other. They're constantly just nitpicking at each other, where, you bombed my city, you bombed civilians, you destroyed my water towers. So all this stuff back and forth. It eventually ends up that Princess Ziri is like, the only way to get past this is to ignore our parents. And back 200 years prior, when these two planets had peace, it was because of mutual marriage between the planets. So they agree. She proposes marriage to Fantu, to Prince Fantu, and he agrees also, all while arguing with the parents, because they're like, this is a Jedi mind trick. You guys are just trying to twist us. This is the Republic. So I definitely found this story of a younger generation trying to move past the disaster of the older generation. A very, very touching story.
Who's
And
the
then
little Jedi that was she a Padawan or was she a knight? The one that suggested that.
No, it was Gela. Gela was just talking to Ziri about it because she's
Okay.
like, well, how did you guys have peace before? And it's like, well, 200 years ago, Gela says, it's 200 years ago, it was by marriage. And that's when Princess Ziri is like, you know what? This is what we're going to do. And it surprises everybody. The Padawan was Enya, who's barely in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was
She kind of
sharp.
just pops in and says stuff and runs. Yeah.
Yeah, she's the teenage kind of point of view in certain things, but she's rarely in it. She just has some lines here and there. So they offer marriage to it, and then pretty much from there he accepts, and the Chancellor Malo is very excited. This is the longest ceasefire they've had, like 3 or 4 days, and they go on like an aid delivery. They announce to both planets that they're getting married. They go to deliver aid through Erona. Remember, like the desert planet, they go through there. They get welcomed with open arms at some points, and then they get shot at other points. So there's a lot of
Doing a
story.
press tour.
Yeah, pretty much. So they do a lot of beats. They do a lot of stuff there. I find it interesting, like some of the other characters. There's the Monarch of Erona, of the desert planet, Ziri's dad, and he has this viceroy who's always whispering like evil things into his ear. And it just reminded me of Lord of the Rings and Wormtongue, where he's like, they're just trying to take over. This is a Jedi trick. And then he's like, this is a Jedi trick. So they have great characters in this, where you just wanted to hate them, and they ended up getting their comeuppance anyway. So they offer marriage, and it's revealed that the Path of the Open Hand has spies there on Iram and Erona, because they want the war. They want the Jedi involved. They want they want disasters. But the big thing is revealed is, and again, spoilers for all this, is that remember we have the drill ships from Midnight Horizon, which I loved. This is kind of their history on them. So they have the drill ships here. Well, they have the drill ships, and the water planet Iram secretly developed bioweapons to battle the drill ships. So, but those bioweapons ended up using towards the path of the open hand for their like poison grenades type of thing. So this is an earlier version of the Niles poison grenades, which are developed in the middle grade books. It's Mission to Disaster. It gives the backstory on how those are developed. So it has the drill ships, it has all the bioweapons. It's also revealed that Axel Greylark, the son of the other Chancellor, who's just like swashbuckling rich kid type of thing, always gambling, he hates the Jedi because his dad died because Jedi weren't able to help. And now he works for the Path. Kind of like not too slyly, but he just hates the Jedi, and the Path of the Open Hand hates the Jedi. So he's teaming up them. So that was a big reveal. The wedding. So then we skip all the stuff. They finally have a wedding. And I loved the wedding scene because I picture it all in my head. And what happens is someone sets off a beacon. Like Axel sets off a beacon to himself because now bounty hunters want Axel because he's causing all these problems. And they want to pretty much capture him and get him arrested and all this other stuff. And so now all these bounty hunters come to the planet during the wedding. So Axel's creating chaos. He's creating all this stuff. So now you have this wedding going on, and then you have an army of bounty hunters outside the wedding trying to get in. Well, now that this wedding is happening, the Republic sent, a bunch of Jedi pretty much just for security reasons. And sure enough, all the bounty hunters are like, we're going in to get Axel Greylark because we want this bounty. And all the Jedi. So there's a big battle between bounty hunters and Jedi, which is really cool. One thing during that battle, which I found was really funny, is one of the bounty hunters says, Jedi are just a bunch of dirty wizards. And Enya, the Padawan, is like, why does wizard always have to be taken in a negative term? So I love that we're getting all sorts of backstory on the term wizard spoken once by one random character in Phantom Menace. We're getting the backstory on that one word. So I did find that funny.
There's a lot to. I think when this first started, when I first started reading this, it took me a while to get into the book. I seem to remember the first third was a little bit, as with a lot of these books, not really sure what's going on. But once the scenes are set, I actually found out. There's a bit of a negative press, I think, wasn't there, online about this book. A bit of a mixed reaction. Most people were saying, "Oh, this is not the book I expected it to be." And things like that. And I think that got into my head a little bit before I started reading it. So, the first 3 or 4 chapters, I was thinking, oh my God, this is as bad as there's a saying online. But then after a while, I really got into it and the dynamics. But I think really, that couple was what really helped me get into it in terms of believing in them and believing that they can bring peace and. It's a bit like the spin-off from we had with Marder and I've forgotten his name in Path of Deceit, with their little sweet romance. And now we have another kind of romance in this book. And there's probably people already going, there's too much love in Star Wars books at this point. But no, it's all quite very relevant to the story. And I really quite enjoyed it. They sounded like they had the clear heads on them. They wanted to end all this war, but unfortunately, there's obviously, as we know, go on, there's a lot of people who don't want it to end. There's money to be made from it, and the Path of the Open Hand, obviously, have been manipulating this as well and feeding off it. So it's there's a lot of some really memorable characters in here. I was just trying to remember.
Let me finish closing out the book before we discuss the book overall. So, and again, I'm a very visual reader. So if you enjoyed Lost Stars, which people do, you'll really enjoy this. And that's why I'm upset that it was spoiled, because Path of Deceit. Let me finish the book and I'll come back to back to the middle grade book. So like I said, you have this big battle going on outside the wedding. You have all these bounty hunters trying to get in. Ships are crashing all around them. people are running away from the wedding, and the prince and the princess stand firmly, and they tell the Chancellor Malo is the one that's marrying them, officiating it, and they look him dead in the eye, and they say, "You will finish this wedding, regardless of what's going on." So me, I'm picturing all these ships crashing, and they finish the wedding. They go to lean into a kiss, and then Ziri, why I love her character, she pulls a bounty hunter runs in, like gets around all the Jedi, running straight up towards the prince and the princess. She reaches under her dress, pulls the gun out, shoots the bounty hunter dead, turns to Fantuzan, grabs him, and kisses him. And I was like, oh man, that's such an amazing scene. All this stuff going on. So they kiss, officially married now, so they can start the peace talks. But there's all this other stuff going on. This battle still going on. The Jedi finally beat back the bounty hunters. Several Jedi died a lot from the gas type of thing. So the bounty hunters eventually retreat. But then, as we mentioned, I like the relationship between Gela, Jedi Knight Gela, and Axel Greylark. So he's just this I don't care about anything type of person, and then he hates Jedi, but he learns to not love, I should say. He learns to really like Gela and almost call her a friend type of thing. He keeps calling her like my Jedi Knight, like almost teasingly, but then he's creating all this chaos around city. And I picture this, they're on a clock tower, and he's like, I'm going to blow up this whole clock tower, and I'm going to bring down the defensive shield around this city and flood this whole city. Because remember, it's a water world. And Gela is trying to talk him down. She eventually yanks the remote out of his hand with the Force, but it's too late because that was the mistake. So once it left his hand, it detonated bombs planted in other areas of the city. So it's like, it's raining. I see these two standing on there. Again, they're just like, I can't turn away from what I've done. I can't turn away from what I've done. I've done terrible things. He's like, I got to end it. And Gela's like, no, I'm not going to give up on you. And she saves him, but it ends up setting off all the bombs anyway. So like 2 or 3 other clock towers blow up. The shields come down. The city gets flooded. She's able to capture Axel, and like another clock tower comes collapsing down. And I'm picturing, the classic Spider-Man comic scene where the whole building comes down and it's Spider-Man holding it up just to save one person, and that's Gela. So it's like this whole tower comes down. She's able to hold up the tower so other people can escape. And it kind of ends there where it's like they beat back the bounty hunters, they capture Axel Greylark, the two get married, and then it's just like, okay, now that we're married, the peace signing should be on Jedha as a message to the galaxy that we're ready to move forward with this. So I thought overall the book, like I said, I'm listening to the audiobook, and already I'm only halfway through. It's already bringing tears to my eyes, the way that like she yells at her father, and it's like, our planet doesn't cry, we move forward. I'm creating peace when you're creating disaster. And the parents slowly get behind it all. They get past, and then there's all these other, like I said, the worm tongue, Viceroy Farrell, who's whispering into the king. They eventually just kill him because he's creating such problems. He gets killed. All these other spies die. But the path of the open hand created chaos, and they pretty much succeeded in pulling the Jedi into it. And it ends with them just, all right, let's go to Jedha and finish these. So I thought overall the book, it might rank in my top 3. It's how much I'm enjoying it, and that's why it could have been higher if it wasn't for that dang middle grade book. And literally, like, the last sentence of that middle grade book is, "Hey, did you guys hear that the war has ended on Irem and Arona? That's great. All right, that's the end of our book." And I was like, wait a minute. So I would have went through this entire book thinking that this wedding wasn't going to happen, because if Path of Deceit proved anything, it was, don't expect anything and anybody can die. Because that was the big thing with Path of Deceit, is you get all these characters and then a bunch of them die, and you're like, oh man, you're main characters, so you all just died. So who knows if that's the book that kicked off Phase 2, Wave 1? Who knows if anybody is safe in any other book? So I would have went through this entire book fearing that these prince and princesses would die and the peace treaty would fall apart and the Path of the Open Hand would continue their plan. But the entire book, I'm reading it, I'm like, well, I know it's going to work because the stupid other book already spoiled it for me. So
Well, see, and I didn't know this. I didn't know the spoiler, and I read that one first, this one first, and like I totally knew they were gonna just end up getting married at the end. I
Well,
was
you
like, oh,
don't
they're gonna
you
end up
don't
getting
know
married. Stop it.
because then when you look at Phase One and Rising Storm book, it talks about the Irem and Arona war that's been going on for hundreds of years, type of thing. So if we don't know if this piece is even going to last longer than this Phase
Yeah.
Two, or if it's all going to fall apart in Cataclysm. So this might be like a temporary piece that they don't really consider peace was ever successful, because it specifically says in that Rising Storm book that there was almost never peace. So type of thing, except for like hundreds of years ago, and we're only back 150.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
overall,
did like
I
how
love-
when they were on their little press tour and they kept stopping places, like they'd always get challenged by somebody, and one of them
Yeah.
would have to fight. Yeah.
yeah, and again, that's great character building because their society is run on who's the strongest, and she's just a random princess. She's been in battle her entire life. She really is strong. And she beats what was not a Pantoran, but what Pan Eta is. It beats his
Mhm.
species. So, a giant orange skinned guy with tusk. She's able to win, and everyone gets behind her. And then even this warring planet that hates Irem, they end up loving the prince because, scorpions like him. So, but yeah, and also, so it's, yeah, what is it, the Path of the Open Hand? It kind of told more of their backstory again, where they got with, when the queen of Irem, the water planet, needed help and supplies, the Path of the Open Hand gave them fuel and gave them food and gave them all sorts of stuff to get them by. But then she started manipulating her into making weapons from because each planet has scorpions, but the one on the water planet are extremely poisonous. And she started developing bioweapons, which now the Path of the Open Hand is pretty much, digging up all this dirt on her to make more bioweapons. Otherwise, I'll tell the galaxy that you're making bioweapons unless you give them to me. And it's like, okay. So I found that very good. All the backstory and everybody, I just thought was Convergence is one of my favorite books of all of High Republic so far, and I loved it. All the characters are great, and I can't wait to see where they move into, because Axel Greylark is in prison, and the mother is still communicating with him, and she's like, you're my chaos type of thing, and he has like this nickname of Chaos. So I can't wait to read Phase 2 because of all the stuff that happened in this one.
Did he call her mother or did he call her Cassandra? I can't remember.
I can't remember for sure. I know there's the two other spies kept calling her the mother. But he kind of was just like, oh, you hate the Jedi? I hate the Jedi too. We can
And
get
then
along.
they thought he was reporting back everything to his actual mother when he was actually reporting back to Mother.
Yeah, that's the good thing about the book is when it says, oh, Mother, it's capital M, so I know right away that they mean the mother. But if you didn't read Path of Deceit, and they're just like, how many moms are we talking about in this book?
Yeah.
No, it's really it does really come good this book. I say after that bit of a slow start for me, and especially listening to the Audible thing, I quite Axel Grey Greylock.
Greylock.
Yeah, Greydor. So yeah, whatever. I hated him for the minute he came into the story, but then by the end I was like, oh no, it's the end. I want more of Axel. It's just it's like a Han Solo times 10 sort of thing, wasn't he? Sort of a bit of a swashbuckling sort of smuggler come gangster.
The audiobook kind of threw me off for him because he sounded older than what I guess he was. Like he sounded like an older guy, like in the audiobook, but he was supposed to be like in his 20s. So
yeah, I mean, I'd seen him as upper 20s, low 30s, whatever maybe. He's, the
he's supposed
son
to be
of a
around the same
champ.
age as Gela. So
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, I like their interactions between them two. He kind of kept semi-seducing her, and then she was kind of like, "Oh, but I'm a Jedi," kind of thing, and she was starting to have feelings for him too. But then he totally like turned.
Yeah, it was like friendship feelings. So, and I loved that the friendship between Prince Fantu and him, because they were just like, Fantu's like, I like everybody, but I just hate this guy. And then at the end, they're like joking with each other, and
he had his back.
So that's when Axel's like, I don't want to be a bad person, but I'm already too deep. Like, I can't stop. Like, they're going to hate me whether I succeed or not, so I'm just going to take down the Jedi. But then she cares about Gilla. Fan 2 won't turn his back on him, so everyone's showing him all this love, which he felt like he never had. So he's got a very interesting character arc.
Absolutely.
And then they move on to Jedha, and that takes us to the audio drama Battle of Jedha.
See, I was
Yes.
confused on that one because I don't know. Well, it was just kind of weird because this one was supposed to be they're doing the actual peace treaty that resulted from the wedding, but yet no one from the inner circle of the wedding or anything went to the peace treaty.
Yeah, I did find that weird too. Ziri and Fan 2, the Prince and the
Yeah,
Princess,
they didn't go.
they sent delegations. Oh, you take care of it. Which I get it because they're like, well, we're still giving out aid to our planet. We're still doing our press run that we're marriage, establishing peace. Can you guys just go sign this peace treaty? And it's just like, well, that's kind of weird, huh?
Yeah, and then they made it seem like all they had to do was just sign it, and it was simple. Then why did they go to Jeddah? Why didn't they just like get a ship in between both planets and sign it there with a few people? Like I thought it was
Remember,
kind of odd.
Jeddah is supposed to be kind of a big holy area for all the meetings of the people who follow the Force. So not having it on the planet was supposed to be for the Republic type of thing. It's like, okay, we'll do the peace treaty here in front of the Republic because everyone knows the planet Jeddah. So like, and they're not in the Republic. Iram and Arona are not in it. So they're like, well, they'll go here, they'll sign the peace treaty to show the Republic that they want to commit to the peace. So
yeah, because they were worrying it was disrupting all the trade routes and other planets were getting affected and
yeah,
and
so it's
stuff like
it's
that.
a political stunt, pretty much. Let's just go to this
Yeah,
more
yeah.
famous planet and sign.
And I like that it called back to the first book, Path of Deceit, because now this is the result of Marta wanting to go to Jeddah and setting up a camp there and being part of the delegation, and they keep trying to become a prominent sect in Jeddah because I guess they have this group that's a bunch of religious heads that kind of make decisions, but they kind of are not accepting of the path of the open hand, so they still feel like they're slighted. But I guess they have like a camp there that they set up like a hospital to help people and provide aid.
Which the Marvel High Republic comic going on right now, the main run, it wasn't making a lot of sense to me. I didn't know what the connection was. And again, this is where it's like High Republic is so connected. You just need to step back and let the story play out. But the comic wasn't making a lot of sense to me. But I did get a lot of backstory before the Battle of Jeddah. Like they talked about all of these other religions. They talked about the planet. They talked about the summit, where all these, and not about the peace treaty, but there's also, I forgot what they called it. It's like the signing of light or something, where all the people who follow the Force, they come to Jeddah to openly discuss things. And Path of the Open Hand is making their first appearance to be like, the Jedi are wrong, the Force is terrible. And everyone's like, man, you guys suck. Like, just shut up. And in Battle of Jeddah, so again, the comic did good giving that backstory. It was a great filler around Battle of Jeddah, where, again, I guess I'm just not a huge fan of audio dramas because it doesn't have the descriptive writing that I enjoy. So when a Jedi drops their lightsaber in Battle of Jeddah, the character in universe has to say, oh no, I've dropped my lightsaber. And nobody says that. The narrator in your mind says it. And that's my problem because there's no scene setting in audio dramas. So that's why it's hard personally for me who's a visual reader, to set the scene in my head when I don't have a narrator saying, and again, I do this all the time. I literally act scenes out that I'm listening to in audiobooks because it's like, oh, Axel Greylark, stink-eyed, and I just kind of like do like a stink eye, type of thing. Like, so I play these scenes out like a video in my mind, but audio drama is just people talking with no scenes, and I'm like, I don't understand it, and the voices are similar. I mean, I'm not going to put down in the book. It was a good book. The Battle at Jeddah, pretty much they went to the peace treaty, the Path of the Open Hand, created chaos because in the comic book they show up. They start spreading all this misinformation about the Force. They start spreading all the Jedi are terrible. Even the other religions of the Force are like, yeah, we don't really agree with you guys on that type of thing. Well, then the Path of the Open Hand gets to the people who live on Jeddah, and they're like, the Force is evil, the Jedi. So they start spreading all this misinformation. And then there is let's just call it a coup to overthrow the signing of the peace treaty, if you know what I mean. So that's kind of what they create, all this hate and all this anger. to go cancel this peace treaty and just pretty much support Path of Open Hand. They tear down the city. They pull down a big statue, which is a great callback to Rogue One. When you're flying through Jeddah, when we first see it, there's this giant statue that's like pretty much buried in the sand and knocked over. So again, what I love about Star Wars is everything gets a backstory. So you have a statue in the sand in Rogue One now gets a mention in a phase 2 book of the High Republic of why it fell and what happened, which is just people going crazy, and they're like, we don't no longer like the Force, and they rip the statue down. So, and then
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Like they had because they were doing like a solstice festival or something like that at the same time, which is why
Yeah.
Salandra show came, and like she took like that shuttle that ended up like she had to save everybody. But there's things for them to go walk around and see. So then she wanted to go. She was meeting with the other. I forgot who the Jedi was that was kind of leading the peace talk things. But she wanted him to go to like the Mirror Cave, which is like the same from Last Jedi, which I
And-
thought that was a cool callback too.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, that was great when they started talking about that. I was like, whoa! I had to rewind and listen to it again because it must be that the mirror is either from Jeddah, because remember they stripped Jeddah down. The Empire ripped Jeddah apart. Just stripped it for everything, including because Jeddah was a big supplier of kyber crystals too. They ripped everything. So
Mhm.
it was either another kind of Force mirror. They gave it a specific name, and that too is either another one or it's one that was ripped out of there and put in Ahch-To, which I doubt. I just kind of considered it another Force mirror.
Yeah, it's another one. I don't think it was something they could rip out because it was like a natural thing. It wasn't like they put the mirrors there.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I guess it shows you what you need to see Force-wise. So I thought that was good. That one Jedi was all stressed out, then he went there and felt better afterwards. So
yeah,
yeah, I thought that was really cool. And then what else happened in there?
yeah. I wrote it down. They don't, like you were right. They don't show you what you need to see, but what you need to understand in yourself.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that mystical Yoda type knowledge, and then it still applies to the Last Jedi. It's like, what do you need in yourself? Your yourself is what Rey needed to see. Like you're you. Regardless of what your history is, regardless of whatever it is with cloning and all that stuff, you're still
You're your own future.
yeah. So that's what she needed to see. So I thought that was really cool. It's the Kyber mirrors of Jeddah. So it's a Kyber
Kyber
mirror.
mirror. Yeah, because the Kyber was that the same Kyber temple from Rogue One, right? That they're guarding at the Wills.
Yeah, it's underneath it. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you had that whole that guy that was the kid that was the one that was working for the Church of the Force. I think that's what it was called. And he was kind of assisting. I mean, he had that robot that
Yeah,
was
Keith,
funny.
I was going to say a big shout out to Keith Serapath, which is the saddest part of the whole book, his fate. But this droid P3 was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Goodness.
He just kept saying,
Absolute riot. He just starts quoting. The only way he can communicate is through quoting parts of the what was it? Is the church's sort of book or something like that? It's a bit like only being able to quote
Will.
Bible
From Guardians of the
passages.
Wills.
Yeah. So everything he says is
he always says like these sly like remarks, but he says it with a quote from like some text or something.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He's like, even the ignorant can feel the Force or something. Like it says something like insulting.
And I like
I'll try and find some of his quotes because or some of the things he says is quite amusing.
Yeah.
there's a lot of mentions of the Graph and the Santekis again. So any callback
Yeah.
to them and how their things are building are pretty good. So again, they ended up killing a Santeca and all this stuff. So it was all right. Like I said, it's more of my negativity towards auto dramas that I'm like, ugh. But once
See, I'm the
the
opposite. I can close my eyes and I just picture like a movie the whole time when they're talking. So
I need the scene set up. I need their facial structures. I need them to say, Fantu side-eyed, and Axel Greylark smugly leaned against a chair. That's what I build it in my mind. Not just, oh no, I dropped my saber. You're not going to pick that up. I'm going to whip you with this. And I'm like, characters don't speak like that, man. Like, I don't like that stuff.
There was a mix of it was. It certainly was difficult at quite a few times doing this audio drama, understanding what's going on. The battle scenes are either overly too descriptive, or we just hear is bang, crash, wallop, and with no idea what any of those sound effects on grunting actually means. You can't imagine it in your head exactly what is happening.
Yeah. And the mother was also there. So part of that made people riot not only was the Path of the Open Hand, but they also released the Leveler on the planet, which creates fear. I guess for humans, it creates fear and stuff like that. Where Jedi, it creates fear and sucks their abilities. So that was another thing that really started riling everybody up.
There was other creatures let loose as well, wasn't there? Amongst all
Yeah.
the Neverna.
That the little Padawan girl like felt sorry for those animals. What were they eating them? What were they doing? They're like farming them, right? Or
Right,
like
just zoos or something. But yeah, that was more of a storytelling aspect, just so characters could be like, "Oh, what you saw was just those other weird creatures," and they're like, "No, it's something bigger." So that was just kind of like a storytelling.
well, no, and then that whole thing, like she let them out, and then she got attacked as a result, and those creatures attacked other things, and then they went out back like they were the saviors, and like, oh, we saved the city. Like, well, it was your guys' fault.
Yeah.
And that led to them like being able to convince people like, oh, look, they helped everybody, and the Path of the Open Hand are these saviors, and all they want to do is like give us aid, and they come to the rescue, and we're the Jedi. They're not anywhere around.
Isn't it during this whole battle and everything, all this chaos going on? Isn't like the heralds speaking from the steps, going
Yes.
and preaching and stuff? Like all this chaos and explosions and death going all around him. And at the same time, he's going.
And then they're blaming the Jedi, like, look what you guys did with all this chaos. Like, you just riled everybody up.
Yeah, you released the Leveler. You told all these people they're liars. You keep spinning everyone because it's funny. Everyone, even the other religions, are like, "Yeah, nobody said that." They're like, "They said it," and it's like, "No, they didn't." But then people are like, "Kill the Jedi," and it's like, "Wait a minute." So what is going on here?
Mostly, yeah. Got the I'm supposed with the Levener confusing people, and then the Herald spouting out. It sort of just manipulates and confuses people exactly what's going on. They all just start to beat each other up for no reason that they can think of, other than that they need to do it. But of course, at the same time, it gets even worse when you got the Irem and Irem's forces move in, don't they? After the
Yeah, they came to the peace treaty with battleships.
Yeah, yes, as you do. That caused, and one of those Jedi's, I can't remember, he gives that great big speech, doesn't he? We got to that bit yet, where he's sort of to the soldiers and stuff.
Oh yeah, he's in the middle of everybody.
Fantastic.
And the comic does a good job filling all that in, and then what happens after Battle of Jedha, like the cleanup and some of that. They've got like 4 or 5. They've got like 4 more issues still. So again, it's gonna be interesting how it closes out, and then obviously teases Phase 2, Wave 2, where it starts setting everybody up. Where 2 Jedis go back to Irem and Erona, which is going to be what Cataclysm was about. So the next adult novel, Cataclysm, released in April, because I know Stephen's going to ask, is going to be back to Irem and Erona. And so we're going back to, which I think is great, because I really want to know if this piece works or if it fails, because that affects what was said in Rising Storm. So it's very interesting for me. A lot of more setups. So we got, they're going back to Cataclysm. We got Axel Greylark locked up going somewhere. We got Destroyer Droids is being funded by the Graf family. So the Graf family is involved with the Path of the Open Hand. They have the Leveler now. Like, things just kind of going. I'm glad this is just 2 waves.
I feel like they're closing in on the mother, though. I don't think she has very much longer to be around. Because Salandra was telling them that she got a weird feeling around her, and then the same feeling came back when the Levelers were attacking the temple, and she kind of saw one. So. Yeah,
Salandra is aware that something or somehow her Force abilities were being drained, and two Jedi were turned to dust on that planet too. Yeah. But nobody knows it's the Leveler. Nobody knows what it is, type of thing.
And so then she helps the mother at the end, and I was so mad. Like, why are you being so naive, like with this woman?
Oh.
But
I guess she's a Jedi, so she has to, be benevolent and help whoever needs help.
She didn't know the mother caused all this, really, but
yeah. Oh, that was the thing that we kind of touched on before, Ryan. Was we're talking about this one that when Salandra went with the mother back to pick up Marta, and she met up with them, that they were in the middle of doing some exchange, and then somebody got killed with a lightsaber,
I don't
right?
remember.
And that was kind of like showing that they were getting some artifact that they were supposed to be there for. That was the whole point of the distraction. You said it was in the comics or something, right? Do you remember that?
I haven't got to those comics yet, so I don't remember.
I haven't either. Yeah.
Yeah, the comics we'll have to discuss at a later date, just because the books are all finished, but the comics won't be finished for like another
Mm.
couple months. I mean, they should hopefully wait. It's almost April now.
Yeah, it's almost.
The next wave of books is about to come out, but the comics are obviously going to go long past those books. So I wonder if these comics, they're probably going to cover the entire phase.
I hope so.
It'd be interesting to see where those Jedi go now that I think about it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Salandra was like, because the mother had just killed the Graf guy.
Yeah,
And then she killed the Graf guy that sent those bounty hunter guys to attack the Salandra and the other guy. And then she kind of helped her to get back to find Marta and the rest of the path. But when she got there, somebody was dying. And then when they left, she realized that, oh, they got killed by a lightsaber. Like, who had a lightsaber? And that's pretty much the lightsaber that Marta had from, what's his name in the first book?
yeah, they
Something like
Hefner.
you mentioned a yellow lightsaber, and that is
Yeah.
the color of his lightsaber.
Yeah, so they're tying everything in with that. I thought that was pretty cool that they were doing callbacks to that book too. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're kind of closing in on her, and they're gonna. I mean, and then they're trying to question what's her name was discussing how they were still trying to interview Axel to try to find out who he was talking to, and he wasn't giving up any information.
Yeah. I felt like it accomplished, and I don't know where I sit as far as comparing it to the other audio drama that they had for phase one. At least that one, I felt like it gave a lot of story to that Tempest Runner,
Mhm.
her name. So it gave a good story to that. But instead of Big Jedi, I think Salandra Show battles, or another Jedi battles one of the magicians, the brothers of the ninth, whatever, door. And so there's still a lot of big battles in the book. But yeah, it's just overall, again, the High Republic is just a master class of storytelling and connectivity. And I'm glad to see that we're firmly in the middle chapters right now. And here in another month, we're going to start kicking off the end of the phase. So it's but that's kind of the review for phase 2, wave 1. I think
I
it's
like how they I didn't never expect them to do like a backstory on the path of what do you call
Yeah.
it? The Nile and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And-
That's what I love about Star Wars. Everything can have a backstory. And we're going back 150 years, and I'm like, what kind of story can you tell? And it's like, oh my gosh, it's the backstory to the Leveler. Oh, it's the backstory
Mhm.
to the Nile. It's the family of the Nile. It's all these other mysteries. It's the backstory of the Rod of Seasons. All this stuff. It's like, man, this is a lot of great information.
Yeah, I mean, when they first said that Phase 2 was going to go back, 100, 150 years or so, I wasn't amazingly enthusiastic about that. I was thinking, well, we just got to a really big point here. I want to continue this story.
So ready.
But
Trying to learn all the
that's-
characters' names.
Yeah, exactly. But it's all working out, and I think we're starting to see exactly why they did it like they are doing, and I got a feeling that it's going to pay off big time.
At least
I
have a
just-
big battle, lots of death and lots of mysteries, so we can jump back to phase 3.
I appreciate the similarity between this and like the movies. Like you had the original trilogy, then you went back and did prequels, and then you did sequels. So that's kind of like what they're doing with this. Like you had the original story, now we're in the prequel era, and then after this we're gonna go back to see what happened after with Martian and stuff. And it's
And even the authors admit it, that was completely their plan type of thing.
yeah.
Where people are trying to spin this stuff, they're like, see, they didn't give us enough stories, so they just telling us this. I'm like, dude, they've had this book written for over a year. Like, you can't just say, well,
Like
they're just throwing all this stuff in there. No, this was all planned from the beginning. Like, they have the beginning, middle, and end planned out before these books were ever written, and it just unfolds. Yeah, authors get a little leeway to kind of explain characters, but the main points of the stories were already planned out, and it really is, like I said, just a masterclass of connectivity and storytelling that broadens the entire Star Wars universe.
And we were talking about what was it, Into the Dark, when they had the flashback storyline with, and they had Arona and Aram. But there was a prince and a princess there too, right?
That was
Or
Rising
Ravine.
Storm.
Was that Rising Storm?
Yeah, because remember it was the Jedi that doubted themselves because there was a big battle 25 years earlier. That's what I was like, what is the point of these 25-year earlier stories? And it's to kind of tell that the Jedi was scared to fail again because they went there and everyone ended up kind of dying anyway.
Yeah.
They failed and their master died. And that's where it was like they had another prince and princess. And it was like, listen, we had peace hundreds of years ago. And I'm like, are you referring to Phase 2?
Yeah.
Or was it even beyond that type of thing? So I'm interested to see how Phase 2 either supports or disproves what they were saying in Rising Storm. So I'm a little apprehensive about it, but again, it's High Republic has been doing great on the way they connect stories, and I'm sure if there's some sort of connection, they'll plainly lay it out for us.
In Light of the Jedi, when they mentioned, were they still at war, Arona and Aram?
They've been at war for hundreds of years. They just
So they
didn't
still
really
are then,
talk about it.
right? Like currently, or not currently, but like in Phase 1, they were still at war, or were they?
Well, because remember, in Rising Storm, it was 25 years earlier, and they're like, well, maybe we can grow together and create peace type of thing. And then that was kind of it. It really didn't talk about if it officially worked or what the current standing of in Iron and Arona is.
I'm just trying to think, because when the Nihil were attacking, and then you had the queen or whatever it was it from Aram or from Arano? That was like the one that was talking to the to what's his name when they were attacking.
I would say like the queen was from Irem because she still had a queen consort, just like Irem does now. So, 2 queens.
I have to go back and read Light of the Jedi to see what connects.
Now
Rising-
that, now that former Path member that Yoda turned up with at the end of Phase 1, he was referred to in the Battle for Jeddah as well. I'm pretty sure I heard
Was he?
his name. I'm pretty sure I heard his name mentioned at least once.
He was in Path of Deceit for sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was in Tomac or
Tomac.
Tromac. Yeah,
He's
yeah.
from the
I'm pretty
comics,
sure I
right?
heard his name mentioned when they were talking about the children again.
Hey, was he supposed to be the one that showed up with Yoda?
I thought he was.
At the end of Midnight Horizon, yes.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't put that together. I thought it was a completely new person. Huh.
No, because I only kind of figured it out because after all of that phase ended, I went through and I reread all the comics instead of having month and 2-month spans in them. And then it was the Yoda story made a lot more sense where he took the leader of Tromac and he just was like, listen, we're going to go look for about this purple crystal that's bringing up all these nameless. So Yoda has some knowledge about these things. And all this negativity that you see online, it's like, well, shouldn't someone know about this? If we're experiencing it 150 years before that people are turning to dust, they should be well aware of what is happening in Phase 1. Again, there's a 150-year gap. There's very few characters alive, but there's always Yoda.
Nobody's witnessing anything.
Guess what happened in Phase 1? And they removed Yoda. They removed the biggest players in Phase 1. They removed Yoda, and they removed the female Jedi. I forgot her name. Of the big 3, you know, with the blonde hair on the cover of Light of the Jedi.
Ava?
Yeah, Avar Kriss. Yeah, sorry, I always name foreign people.
Well, she's not alive yet, right?
No, not yet. But I'm saying in Phase 1, they removed the biggest players, which I view Avar as one of the biggest players, and they removed Yoda. So everyone's like, all the negativity online is, shouldn't someone know what's going on? Well, someone does. And that person was removed from Phase 1 on a mysterious task that he don't know what he did. He went off planet with Tromac, who was alive during all of this, who experienced it. They all left. They crashed. They were gone for the entirety of Phase 1. They come back, and Tromac has gone insane. And Yoda's just like, we must look to the past. And we're like, okay, cool. Here we are. So that negativity is
Tromac
upsetting.
would know everything.
Yeah, that negativity is upsetting because it's like, not every Jedi was alive. Yeah, there's records and stuff, but I'm sure I can't look back 150 years and know exactly what happened on March 4th. I'm not going to do the math in the 1700s or whatever.
Well, and plus, we know that the Jedi are relatively inward when it comes to sharing knowledge. And
Yeah.
plus, anything about the Nameless is more likely to be held under classified and stuff, because it would obviously send a whole lot more panic through Jedi for years to come to think that there's these kind of beings out there. So they're going to shelf them under top secret, and probably hopefully not leave them in somebody's garage.
Well, and then
You don't want
even when reading, right, I started reading Padawan, and I mean, kind of spoilers for that one, but Obi-Wan stumbles upon something from Orla Jareni, and he's like, well, there's no other data in this file. Like, did she ever go back to this planet that she discovered? So there's missing information, from this era that never got completed and put in the temple archives, whatever. So I mean, just because somebody sees something doesn't mean it got reported back then,
Yes.
It's like now, you have historical data from back during, ancient times, whatever, or 100 years back, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's been written down, So
or they got to search through 100 years worth of files in written data instead of just Googling the word dust. So it's, again, it was all planned out. It's going to be told. Yoda was removed. Now Yoda's back. We're going to get backstories on Yoda's adventures. What happened there? Because remember, in the comics for Phase 1, he saw that purple crystal. He knew it was on the Nile ship. He knows Mark Yanro has it. And then he left with Tromac to be like, listen, we need to look at where he got this and what's going on. Boop, he crash lands and that's it. And we don't know anything that happened.
what was the purple crystal? Did they explain anything?
Well, that's here. That was making the Rada Seasons or whatever it is. So, because they have it here. I mean, I thought it was going to be the leveler type of thing, but obviously that was way too big. It was an egg. But they're gathering all the parts to control the leveler. And remember, the rod was separated. At some point after Phase 2, they lose the rod because it's half the rod is frozen in ice, and the other half I think Markian already has. So that's where he puts them together and unlocks the leveler.
Interesting.
His powers combined.
So we've got one more month until the next big book.
Quest for Planet X. Quest for Planet X, the middle grade, and the adult novel Cataclysm both drop on April 4th.
And are they the last two of this phase, or is there
Phase 2 is only 2 waves. So this is going to be the end of the story. There's also going to be the young adult book too.
Right. So when does phase 3 start? Is that going to be next year or at the end of this year?
If this is in April, I would guess it's at the end of the year. They don't take that big of a gap. It might be like 6 months. So I could definitely see.
How long was it? How long was the whole project? That was.
They said years from the beginning, which we're about to cross. We're about to cross. We're into our second year now.
It doesn't seem like a minute ago we was all reading The Light of the Jedi.
Yeah, really?
I know. That was one heck of a introduction. Okay, so we've reached at the end of our little recap. Gone a bit more than an hour, I think, talking about these 3 books and what exciting. So we'll probably have another. I expect we'll have a. What should we do? As it's a junior novel and a big book, we'll probably have one big recap thing. Do they come out close together?
Yeah, it's April is the adult middle grade, and then May 2nd is Path of Vengeance.
Right, so we could probably do 7 late. We could probably do 7 late May, perhaps June, and wrap up this.
Phase 2, Wave 2. Wrap it up.
Yeah, excellent. Right, well, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I hope everybody's enjoyed the High Republic recap of 3 books in an hour, which is how we like to do it here. 18,000 words written of Ryan's notes, digested in no time at all. And as ever, you will hear some words at the end of this podcast on how you can follow us on various social media and stuff. And you're more than welcome to do so. So
join our Facebook group.
Let us know what you think.
Yes, please do. We are bursting to hear what everybody else is thinking of these books so far. Thank you very much, all. We shall see you again. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
For light and life.
Like, like,
We are one. We are one.
Go switch off. I am the Senate.
Be sure to follow us online. We're at Facebook at PSW Senate. Join our PSW Star Wars Facebook group where we all are in there interacting. You can find us on Twitter at PSW Senate. On Instagram, we're at PSW Senate Podcast. And on TikTok, we're at PSW Senate Podcast. We look forward to hearing from you.
The Force will be with you, always.
Gotta have
well,
stuff for the.
we'll go back over it again. So as a bit of a subplot to all this, as I've seen somebody posted it in Reddit, and I think you commented on it as well. I think I might as well. How much do you think the Sith are involved in all which is going on at the moment?
I like to think that they're not involved, type of thing. So it's almost like they're learning from this type of thing. Not really learning because they're the Sith, so they always got a plan, type of thing. I don't want the Sith to seem weak, but they might take the opportunity to continue through what someone else has started. So I don't want. And again, I'm not really invested in either one. So if it ends up being like a Sith that's manipulating Marta Rowe, because remember she's getting all sorts of money from somebody, so she might have ultimately. He might have just a Sith could have just used her hate to help fuel his own agenda, which is cause problems in the galaxy, type of thing. So I'd be fine with something like that. But if it's like Markion's a Sith, I'm like, no, dude, that's dumb.
No.
I like the idea, and apparently, this was a huge thing, and anything with the sequels. I like people being their own people. So if the Everini and Markion Rowe and his family just naturally hate the Jedi and they caused a lot of problems, that's fine. Nothing has to be related to the Sith at all times. Can they push some things? Yeah, they can, maybe cause a little problems here and there, but other people can cause problems in the galaxy other than the Sith. It's a big galaxy.
Yes. And I mean, I'm kind of with you. I think. I mean, I wouldn't hate it if the Sith were, playing the game here and manipulating people. But ultimately, it would be nice. The way it seems to at the moment there was no mention of the Sith. It would you could see the Sith coming and just picking up the remains of what's left off at the end of this and using it to their advantage. But now might be our time because the Jedi are on the way, and weakened from what's happened. doing all this.
Learned from it kind of thing. It's like, well, we know what happened with the hyperspace disaster and how they fall through and people are becoming dependent on them. Like, what if people started hating them and then we turned against them type of thing? So,
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, we don't know much about this, these artifacts and stuff, and I don't think so. We haven't had any clear Sith mentionings in any of the artifacts and stuff, and they've been mentioned like the dark side. I think someone has mentioned them being dark side, of the dark side, shall we say? I think it was near the end of the Battle of Jedi. I think that I can't remember the name of the Jedi who was in that one. Sort of sensed the dark side. I think in whatever was present at the Path's HQ. It was interesting that somebody also mentioned on Reddit, High Republic related, but going back to Phase 1 about the Nameless and the Nevener on the Starlight Beacon and what happened to them. Because I never even thought about it after. There's so much else going on that the fate of the Nameless was not really in the forefront of my mind.
well, it's definitely been on the backside of my mind because I know that they mentioned that they had locked her like in the basement or whatever. They captured the thing there. So now it's like, well, what the heck happened to it? So I'm definitely wondering, and I hope it's not abandoned type of thing either.
Yes. Well, a bit like I was going to say the Ferengi then, a bit too much Star Trek in the last 5 days. The Drenga. And they're sort of, I was almost convinced, that they were going to be more than they were. Obviously people reading just the books would think that they hardly were in it. But they did have a lot more involvement. It's a little bit of a shame that we didn't get just a little bit more Drenga. But hey, I wouldn't be surprised if they were back again in Phase 3 in some form. And with a bit one-dimensional in some respects, aren't they? I suppose they're just like, meat, must have some more meat. Whereas
they're good, they're good villains overall. I don't see them as making big scheming plans, but they're like cannon fodder villains that could do a lot of damage.
They become pirates.
Yeah, generally, apart from when we first met them on their planet through that into the dark portal thing into that planet, there was a really good conversation going on back and fro in that one. But that's been about the most interesting conversation we've had with the Drenga. The rest of the time, it's all about they just want to eat something. So it's they're a bit like cats, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they just want to be fed. You're not going to have an intellectual conversation with them. All right. So with pre-discussions with Ryan, while we was just setting the stage and stuff, we said that we're sort of whiz through Quest for the Hidden City thing because there's not really there to speak about. And then sort of concentrate more on Convergence and probably concentrate a bit more on Battle for Jeddah or Battle of Jeddah. I can't remember.
Is it 4 of?
Well, I keep getting it wrong. Could be either.
I don't know if it's right or not though.
Well, it could be either, couldn't it? Because just to get us up to date, we need to skip through. We need to not spend too much time on anything. Just see that we get through the three books, and we're not falling any further behind. On discussion, I think
It's Battle of
Battle of.
But I have notes for Convergence. So once we kind of kick off and say what we're doing and all that, I can do Convergence if I don't know if somebody else wanted to do the quick part for Quest or talk about Battle of Jeddah because I didn't minimize my notes for the other two. I only had time for Convergence. Convergence took
Convergence. They're all running together.
I can't remember any of them right now, unfortunately, but I'm sure bits will come to me as we speak.
I'm actually listening to Convergence audiobook right now too, so because my library.
That's the one with the wedding and everything, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, the wedding, the city of bats, and then the peace treaty with, I guess, the battle.
The street fight. Yeah.
City of Bats. Oh, Scorpion.
Street fights.
Remember
Batty. Yeah. Basically, yeah. Religion, wedding, bats. Is what it all comes down to in one word. I should try that. I should try that on Reddit, shouldn't I? Summarize each High Republic book in one word.
One word.
One word, not a lot.
That'd be a bit of a challenge for people. Right, so we're gonna get going then, are we?
Yeah. I think we can go.
I'm ready.